Hey guys, what's up? Chad Hermansen here with Mental Edge Training Coach. Today I'm going to be going a little different route here. I'm not going to be talking to a former major league player or a coach or a scout. I'm going to be talking to a father that is a dear friend of mine. His son, his name is Taylor Smith. The gentleman I'll be speaking with is Ryan Smith, the father of Taylor. Taylor was an amazing baseball player. We lost him just a year ago to alcohol. He became addicted to alcohol. And Ryan, his father, is going to share this story with kind of the progression of what got him into becoming an alcoholic, and then the seizures he had, the many numerous times that we almost lost him due to different circumstances in his life, and then ending up actually losing him a year ago. So Ryan has been brave enough and had enough courage to come on board and share this story with us. It's raw, it's emotional. So I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you actually learn something from this, and that you can share this with your son, your daughter, to let them know that you just got to stay away from this stuff. So please enjoy this episode with Ryan Smith. Hey Ryan, how we doing? Thanks for coming to the show. How we doing today?
Doing well. Thanks, Chad. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So, guys, I brought Ryan Smith on today. He's a very dear friend. We've known each other since I was a little kid, basically. We had grown up in Las Vegas together. Families kind of moved into the Vegas area. He had a bunch of boys, got the little boys running around all over the place. The bunch were older than me. And then we had one that was his son, Taylor, who was probably, I guess you could say, he was more best friends with my brother, hung out with my brother a lot. And we did a lot of things together. So I brought Ryan on here. This is kind of, you could say, a different kind of feel, a different story. We actually lost Taylor. It's been about a year now, right? So we lost Taylor, and I wanted to bring on Ryan. I've been thinking about him a lot in regards to, Taylor went through some things, and I wanted to bring on Ryan today to kind of walk us through the things that he went through, good, the bad, the ugly. And if you can, just maybe we can even go all the way back to high school if you want to, and just kind of share his story.
You bet. Absolutely. Well, as you said, Taylor was one of four boys in our family. He was the third son. He was fortunate to have two older brothers who were very, very into sports: football, basketball, baseball. And from Little League on, they all played baseball. And I'll go back even a little further. Taylor, at the age of 7, was playing Pee-wee baseball, and back then it wasn't coach pitch, T-ball, or machine pitch. They pitched the kids from the mound, and Taylor was a pitcher from the age of 7. And at 7, he was mowing them down. So I mean, he started very early. But he had the luxury of having two older brothers that he just shadowed everywhere. Wherever they were playing, he was playing, whether it was football, basketball, baseball. So he got a real early start in love of sports, and more particularly baseball, as he grew up. And at the time, we lived in Utah, and they had all-star teams for all the kids. Taylor was on an all-star team from the age of 7 all the way up through the age of whenever the last Babe Ruth is, 14 or 15, I guess, but before he got into high school. He was an all-star all those years. And a couple of the years, 13 and 14, I think it was, they went to the All-Star World Series in Kissimmee, Florida, and got to play both years there. So he's had an amazing career in baseball. He started out at Green Valley High School. Chad was a junior and Taylor was a freshman, and Taylor was one of the starting pitchers as a freshman. His coach, Roger Fairless, he used Taylor a lot, even as a freshman. He wasn't the number 1 or number 2. He was probably number 4 or number 5 in the starting rotation. But his freshman year, Taylor, they every year they'd go to play in a Lions tournament in San Diego. You remember those, Chad? Very, very prestigious baseball tournament every spring in San Diego. And the final game, they were playing for the championship. As a freshman, Fairless was out of pitchers, and he started Taylor the final game, and Taylor pitched a complete game victory, and they won the tournament. So that was the start of Taylor's high school career, and every year forward, he was one of the top pitchers in the high school, and well known around the state, much like Chad was. Followed by Taylor had the real advantage of pitching when he was sophomore and freshman, when all the scouts were there seeing Chad play, and so they got to see Taylor as well, and so he became pretty well known as a all-star pitcher for Green Valley. Green Valley had amazing teams back then. All 4 years of Taylor's high school, they won the state championship. I think 3 of the 4 years they beat Bishop Gorman to win the title, which was always a good thing to do. That was our big rival, but it was a lot of fun. There was some fun baseball played, and just a lot of good activities. And Taylor had some great friends and great people that were coaching him and helping him and seeing him through those life challenges of baseball. That's his high school career, and that's the reason why Taylor got to where he was, and was highly recruited by colleges and things. He at the age of 16, he was offered, and he accepted to play for the U.S. Pan Am Games over in Hawaii, and had a good time doing that. And it was just, it was baseball mecca. He loved it. We loved it. We were his family groupies, and we're on the road constantly with him, watching him play. So that was his high school years.
That was good. Yeah. So he became a stud. Yeah. I remember he was a freshman. Now Taylor was, if you can kind of envision that tall, lanky, you had some size in your family. Biff is like 6'4". Corbin's a big guy, so Taylor was probably at least 6'2", I bet, his freshman year. Right. So but I remember him coming in, and we had some players that were looking at being drafted. So I believe he was a freshman. I was a junior, like you said. We had seniors that were above me that year that, the scouts were all over the place. So it was a great experience to see all these guys starting to come in. And so talk us through and walk us through maybe his senior year as we kind of start to dive into, you mentioned college coaches were recruiting him, and obviously professional scouts were starting to look at him. What was his senior year like?
Well, his senior year was it was pretty much like his junior year. It was just kind of a more of the same, just being the number one pitcher on the team and going out and throwing hard, and when he wasn't pitching, he was playing first base until Dave Jensen came along, and then that relieved him of that duty. But he loved playing the position as well as pitching. But Fairless, his coach, he understood that Taylor's game was going to be as a pitcher, and so he pulled him off the field and made him a full-time pitcher, and from that the scouts really paid attention. They were there all the time, both college and pros. The ones that were watching him the most were the Diamondbacks and the Blue Jays. They really had an eye out for him, and I'm not sure where they first started getting their interest in him, but they were out in droves. I mean, they were there for a lot of games, and not just Taylor. I mean, there were other kids on the team that were being looked at as well, to either for college or to be drafted in the pros. And so, I mean, it was like who's who of baseball scouts at most of the games, whether they were at our home field or other places, but there was a lot of them. And Taylor had his 5 college visits that were allowed at the time, and got to participate in some things to see what he wanted to do and how he wanted to go along. He really wanted to play for BYU, but BYU wasn't recruiting him. So he said, well, I need to know, and you guys aren't coming forward. So he just decided not to do it. At the time, Kevin Eberwine was playing at UNLV, and Kevin had talked to Taylor about coming to UNLV and playing there because they had a really, really sweet program, and it was really up and coming. And they had a new coach that I think his name was Goldschmidt or something, but he had the program really going in the right direction, and he came after Taylor and really wanted him and offered him a scholarship. And Taylor decided at that point, yeah, I'm going to go to UNLV. I like the program. I like the players there. The coach is great. And so he'd signed his letter of intent to play at hometown UNLV after going around the country and seeing all these other schools. And I wasn't disappointed in that. That just meant more games for me to go to.
What were some of the schools that he visited his senior year?
Tulane, Arizona. Or no, Arizona State, sorry, Florida, and I can't remember the others. It's so many years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, so I kind of wanted to paint that picture. Like, we're talking about a really good pitcher in high school, right? Yeah. So, and Kevin Eberwine, one of my best friends growing up, and he had an awesome career. If you remember Ryan Ludwig. Was a year. Ryan was a year between Taylor and myself, so he was, I believe, a '96 grad. Went on to have a great career with the Cardinals, and I believe with actually a couple of different teams. And Ludwig is actually at the time, my understanding is a minor league hitting coordinator. Does a lot of things with the Cardinals right now. So he was in great company there.
yeah, absolutely. So it was exciting to think that he was going to go to UNLV, and we were going to be able to go watch him play and follow the team and that. And it was just good times. I think if the junior college there where Sean ended up, I think if that had been around when Taylor was making his decision, he probably would have gone there.
Yeah.
To play a year or two just to bolster himself up for a better position in the draft, but it wasn't there. It wasn't available. So he signed at UNLV.
Yeah, we had one option back then. It was UNLV or Reno if you want to stay in Nevada. There's probably that junior college up north in Reno as well. But yeah, so kind of limited options there. So you either that even today, you have CSN and UNLV in Southern Nevada. So if you don't have a spot there, and if you want to stay home, it's that much harder. So that's why a lot of the top players tend to leave Vegas and go to the Arizona States.
Yeah.
But a lot of them also end up coming back because they kind of realize this isn't what I thought it was. I'm not playing. Many different reasons why. So that you mentioned the Diamondbacks and the Blue Jays are really heavy. At least they're coming to the game. The Blue Jays are starting to take an interest there. So as you start to get, what starts to happen as you get closer to the draft? What's happening with him and your family?
Well, we're hearing more from the Blue Jays. They're coming over and talking to us and letting us know, what they're proposing. Which really surprised me. I thought the Diamondbacks were going to be the team to come after him because Taylor and Bobby
Pierce.
Bobby Pierce, Taylor and Bobby Pierce. They would spend I think it was their junior year, every weekend they would go to Arizona and play for the Diamondback scout team. So their scouts were watching Bobby and Taylor every weekend play, and I honestly thought that the Diamondbacks were going to be the team coming after him, but they kind of went away, and the Blue Jays really came forward. I can't remember the name of the scout, but he was calling me probably once a week for the first few days, and then every day after that, and he just was telling me, hey, we really want to bring Taylor on. What are your thoughts? And I said, my thoughts are Taylor's already signed his letter of intent to play at UNLV, and I think he's really got his heart set on doing that. Mm-hmm. And he asked me why, and I remember saying, well, he just thinks that he can get bigger and stronger and get some of that mentality behind him that he needs. And I think a lot of that had come from Menlo Greer, the pitching coach for Green Valley. He talked to Taylor about it, and he says, physically you're okay, but he says mentally I think you need to strengthen up a little bit, and you'll be better off if you can play college before you go to the pros. And Taylor took that to heart, and he thought, well, he knows what he's talking about. So he did. That's what I told the scout, and that's what Taylor always told him. We appreciate you. We appreciate your offers, but here's what I'm doing. So that's where it stood on draft day. He was going to UNLV.
Okay. So he started to say, hey, I'm going to go to college. That's probably going to be the best option for me. The draft was, this is about 97 or 98?
97.
97. So the draft it's not, I would say unlimited numbers, but it was a little different from where it is now.
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
So walk us through draft day. There's probably that first round, second round. Maybe that was the first day. Then you have 3 days of the draft now.
Right.
This year was a little bit weird where it was only 2 days, being 5 rounds, and then you have a free agent type deal. So walk us through what happened on draft day, because he was obviously drafted. So what happened there?
Yeah. Well, the scout called us the first day. He says, our number's up. We really want to take Taylor, but we want to take him if he's going to play for us. We don't want to take him and then waste a draft pick for a kid that's going to go to college. And Taylor says, I appreciate it, but I'm going to UNLV. So I think it was the second round that they had called, and that was where they planned on taking him. So they passed on him on the second round. I think then there was the second day on the 6th round. They called again and said, Are you sure about this? Because we would really like to draft you, and we'll draft you in this round, and we'll still pay you second round money.
Wow.
Taylor's mind was set up. He said, "No, I'm still going to UNLV." So they passed on him then, and then we heard from him on the third day, and I think it was the 33rd round, and we'd even forgotten about it because we weren't even following it after that. They called again, and they says, "We know you're going to play at UNLV, but we drafted you anyway." And Taylor goes, "Okay, well, thank you very much," and that was that. Well, after the draft, then Legion Ball started, and so Taylor was playing the summer between leaving high school and going to college. He was playing Legion Ball, and the scout was there for every game, and Taylor was just knocking him dead in Legion Ball. He was pitching like a big leaguer. I mean, he was probably throwing 95, 98 miles an hour, and and here's the fun part is Greg Maddox had talked to him and helped him out a little bit with some pitches and helping him with some control, and he taught him a changeup pitch that made it Taylor's out pitch. So he would set him up with a slider or a fastball, and then he would come in with another fastball, and then he'd throw this changeup that would just die on the plate, and everybody was swinging for the fence for it. And it was a great pitch, and it was something Maddox had taught him, and he loved it. So he had 4 pitches in his tool bag, and was just doing great in Legion Ball, and nobody could touch him. And the scout finally called us one day, and he says, I'm going to quit dancing around the park here. He says, I'm ready to sign you right now. We'll give you second round money and send you to single A. We're bypassing rookie ball. We're going to send you on to single A and get you going.
Wow.
And Taylor had such a fun baseball summer. He thought, I don't know that I want to give this up. I think I'm ready to go. And so, I said, it's your decision. And he said, okay, I'm going to do it. So he left and went to finish out the season for the Blue Jays in their high A ball club. And then he played a little bit of fall ball after that, and then he was ready for spring training next season. So and the spring training, they invited him to a big league camp. So he never really really never went to rookie camp or to the minor league camp. He was always in the big leaguers. He said his locker was in between Roy Halladay and Roger Clemens.
They were grooming him already, and it's interesting. I'm glad you brought that point up, because I just want to emphasize to the audience here that, like, this is the type of pitcher we're talking about, and we're not even getting into him as a person yet, and the dude he was, but we're talking about a kid that he was a future big leaguer. He had that stuff. He had all the intangibles to do that. And then things as we kind of go through, and to skip rookie ball, to skip all these things, that's pretty crazy, because even today's game, that rarely happens, right? College players is every now and then might go to like an A ball, a low A, a high A. Typically, it's a short season A ball, right? And high school kids are all going to rookie ball, and a lot of them end up taking 2 years to get out of rookie ball, and they get in there that first year, and they're like, "Wow, this is a lot harder than what I expected."
Pretty intense, yeah. Well, he was a very mature ball player, and the scout even told me, he says, he played his rookie ball as a freshman and a sophomore in high school. He said he was playing at a level that most kids don't play till they're a junior or a senior. And he was right. I mean, he was playing that much baseball that young, but he did start to grow a little bit too. I mean, he capped out at 6'4", and his weight got up to around 200. So I mean, he was like the ideal big league pitcher going in.
Yeah, no, it was a good athletic frame, and like you said, when he was young, but freshman year back to high school, he was a rail thin, right? Which is most kids are at that point.
Yeah.
And then fast forward 4 years, it's like, man, this guy's really starting to kind of put it together physically. So it's cool to see. So now, as we kind of fast forward a little bit in his minor league career, he got hurt. He got injured. So walk us through the injury.
Well, let me show you this picture here. This is, I don't know if you can see that. That's a picture of Taylor in his big league uniform next to his buddy in the AAA uniform. So Taylor had just gotten called up, so he was going up to play in the bigs and saying goodbye to his friend there in the Sky Sox in New York. And so Taylor got called up, and he was pitching. He was actually closing for the Blue Jays, and he had a couple of games where he closed and did great. And then the third game, he closed the game, won the game, and he came off the mound, and his elbow had swollen up. He said it was like the size of a grapefruit. So it just really swelled up. So he showed the trainer there, and the trainer goes, "Oh, geez," and says, "Oh, it looks like you've blown out your elbow." Well, Taylor's been pitching since he's 7 years old, and he's never had any arm problems whatsoever. And so now to have this was just totally devastating to him. So anyway, they sent him down to Alabama, and he had Dr. Jobs did surgery. It ended up being Tommy John surgery. So he had the Tommy John surgery, and they flew him back to Las Vegas, where he was rehabbing there and going to physical therapy. And he was bummed, but that's what happened to pitchers. And he wasn't thinking that my career's over now. He was just thinking, I got to get this fixed and get back in the game. Well, somewhere between minor league ball and getting up to the big leagues, Taylor had learned how to go out with the guys and drink a little bit. And when I say a little bit, I mean a lot. I went to a game one time in Hagerstown, Maryland. I think it was their Double-A team. I went to watch him play there one time I was in town, and after the game, Taylor pitched after the game, And the cool thing about it is, while I was at the game, I got to throw out the first pitch. The only time in my life I've been able to do that, and it was a highlight of my life. But it was very cool. But after the game, Taylor took me over to his apartment and showed me where he lives. He lived with 5 Hispanic guys, because most of the guys on the team were from Hispanic countries. So very few of them spoke English, and so Taylor was learning a lot of Spanish. He actually spoke it pretty well. But one of the guys opened up the refrigerator in the apartment, and it was just chock full of beer. And I said, "Oh, there's no food in there. What do you guys eat?" He goes, "Oh, we get up in the morning, go to the training table, we eat there, and then we eat before the game, and or after the game, and then we come home." And he said, "That the other guys, they do all the drinking." Well, I kind of knew better than that, because I knew Taylor's bad habits would catch up to him. And in high school, I don't think Taylor had a problem in high school, although I think he had some friends that kind of steered him in the wrong direction. And for Taylor, that was not a good thing, because he became very addicted really fast. But I don't think, and I don't blame minor league baseball for it, but I think the process of minor league baseball, where you get lonely and you don't have anything but your teammates around you, you kind of do what they do, and you know better than I do at that, because you've been there. If you're not strong mentally and willfully, then you're going to give in to those temptations, and I think that happened quite a bit while he was in minor league ball. So that's kind of a backstep to introduction to where Taylor ended up. But when he came home from the Tommy John surgery and started rehabbing, he was going out at night with a few of his friends in Vegas, high school graduates that didn't have anything better to do than to go out drinking at night, and he would go out with them, and it became a very habitual thing to be out every night. And he would go during the day to rehab, but then he'd be out at night drinking. And I don't think the rehab was going as well as it could have, because he was doing too much of the other extracurricular activities. So when it came time to report back to the Blue Jays, he went back to Dunedin, Florida, where the spring training is, and they had him there for a few weeks, and his arm just hadn't healed properly, and so they sent him back home and said, you need to keep rehabbing and then report back in a few months. So he did. He came back home, and he was rehabbing and drinking and rehabbing and drinking. And I think after a while, the rehabbing was taking second place to the drinking, and so eventually the Blue Jays were realizing that his arm wasn't healing properly, and it got into a new draft season, and so they drafted in some more pitchers and said, "Taylor, we're going to have to release you." So that's where they ended up on that. After 4 years, he was released, and then his agent was working to get him tryouts with other teams, which he was constantly doing. But I think he was more, his depression was more than he could handle, and his drinking became more and more apparent. And so the tryouts weren't as successful as they could have been had he been fully focused on actually getting back into baseball, and less focused on the depression and the drinking that he was doing. With some people, you can drink socially, and some people, if you have one drink, you can't stop. And Taylor was at the second. He couldn't even smell it without needing it over and over until he was just completely wasted. And unfortunately, he had that chemical makeup where it didn't do him any favors to even get around alcohol. It just got worse and worse.
Yeah, and what's interesting is when that was kind of all going on, I mean, for me personally, a lot of times, especially here in Vegas, you come in, you have the off season, and you kind of have a group of guys. They all start working out together, right? Pitchers find other pitchers where they can go throw with. They get on that same routine, and you're also working out together. Position players are doing the same thing. And then kind of as you get closer to leaving for spring training, pitchers now want to start throwing to hitters. I remember not really ever getting to do that with him because when I first got married, my wife was going to school up north, up in Utah. So I was working out with all the guys up there. And so Taylor and I kind of grew apart in the sense where I didn't really see him much anymore. And I didn't know all this was going on,
Right.
and all of these things, because I would have loved to just be there with him. And it sounded like he was kind of, obviously there was an addiction problem, but he had surrounded himself with kids. I don't know if it's necessarily players, but people of influence that, hey, let's go do this. And he was hopping on board. So he gets released, right? And you mentioned the word in there, depression. Some things are going on there. What happens after he gets released?
Well, he came home, and the first few weeks were a little tough. I mean, he still couldn't do much in the way of rehabbing because his elbow was still building itself and getting stronger. So there was minimal things he could do, and I tried to get him enrolled in some classes at UNLV because he had 4 years of paid college after he left baseball. And I was trying to get him to use that just to pass the time. And he enrolled for a couple of classes and dropped out and never really finished anything because he would just find extracurricular things to do at PT pubs and things like that, which just drew him in. So his depression got worse and worse, and as he would find relief from it by grabbing a few of his friends and going out and partying all night long and having a good time, and then he would come home, and he would come home at 3 a.m. and he was still living at our house, so we knew what was going on, and this probably happened for about 2 years straight that he was doing that, and all the while he's thinking, I'm going to get back in baseball when I'm darn good and ready to get back in baseball, and I'm pushing him to get back in baseball, thinking that that's the only way he's going to stop, partying and drinking so much. Well, he shot through his signing bonus money, pretty fast, and didn't have much more to spend and to buy rounds at the bar. I mean, he was there being the big spender, and the big show, as they called him. And after that was gone, then his friends started. They started, actually, most of them started getting on with their lives, going to school or getting married or moving out or doing whatever, and Taylor was just stuck. It's almost like he was stuck in his sophomore year of high school, not knowing what to do, where to go, how to do it. He just depression was real prevalent. I mean, we actually wondered if he may be bipolar because he just was so off the wall on some of the things he did, and but we couldn't keep him sober long enough to have him tested to determine if that was the case. So that it just kind of got worse and worse from there.
Yeah, it seems hard because you mentioned he's still living in your home through all this, and you're probably seeing this with you and your wife, going like, what do we do, right? And was there any did he show that depression in regards to when he was with the Blue Jays? Did they have any sense of that, or any sense that he was going through an addiction problem?
They never mentioned it to us. I tried to get information from them, but they didn't really come forward with anything. They claimed HIPAA laws prohibit them from telling me anything about him.
That's true.
mentally or physically. And I knew that, but I thought I'd ask in the hopes that maybe there was a rhyme or reason behind it. I kind of think that when he went back and wasn't completely ready to play again, they still brought him back because they wanted to see how he was mentally. And then I'm guessing he probably wasn't all there mentally. He probably was spending his time drinking and not working out or doing anything. So I'm going to guess that's a big reason why he got released. And after seeing how he was, I honestly can't blame him.
Yeah.
I mean, that they had their own business to run, and they can't be babysitting every player. So
yeah, I would have to imagine when they're, you're dealing with trainers every day, right? Those people that he's doing his rehab with. You have your strength coaches. My guess is maybe he was lethargic, right?
Yeah.
Going through all those workouts, and they're probably seeing like, oh, this guy's not recovering at all. Maybe they saw the signs themselves, going through that. So he gets released. He's going through these struggles. He's still living with you guys. Like from your perspective as a father, like once there was a time when he, like, baseball was, I mean, you could say it was done at that point when he got released. You're trying to get him back. What is it? Does he continue to go through this process of the addiction? Because he probably doesn't know how to stop.
He doesn't know how to stop, and he wants to play baseball so bad, but he doesn't have a place to play. And the only thing he's at that point in time really good at is drinking. And so he found that to be his out from not playing baseball. Okay, if I'm not playing baseball, I'm going to do the next best thing that I can do. He didn't put two and two together and realize that, well, I'm not playing baseball now, I better find the next career path that I'm going to go down. That never even entered his mind. He just always thought, I'm going to get back into baseball, and didn't realize that you don't get back into baseball by being an alcoholic and drunk every day. Yeah. He didn't realize the damage he was doing to himself physically and mentally. And as a father, I mean, I would sit down and try to explain things to him. I mean, my dad was an alcoholic, so I lived through that as a kid. I knew what was going on, and I knew what the end result was going to be. The only difference is my dad was a functioning alcoholic. He could keep a job and still be drunk, but Taylor wasn't the same way. Taylor would just be completely wasted, and nothing else mattered. So we'd have our little chats, and I would take him out in the backyard, and we'd play catch, just to I'd try to just get him back into the game of baseball. And the problem with playing catch with him at that age, he threw the ball so hard that I couldn't hardly see it, let alone catch it. So yeah. I would put on Jordan's catching gear, and I'd play catch with him in full catching gear because I was afraid he's going to hurt me. But we would do that for a while, and I think, well, this is all good. And then he would take off, and we wouldn't see him for several hours, and he'd come back completely blitzed. And I realized that this is a bad path for him, and we got to do something about it. So after a little while of this happening, we realized that Vegas isn't good for him. He's got some bad friends that are influencing him, and I trust me, I don't blame the friends. I blame Taylor. This was all his results and his fault. He did have some influence from some friends, but he chose that lifestyle. So anyway, my brother lived in Denver, and I talked to him. I says, we don't know what to do with Taylor. Do you think we could send him there, have him live with you for a while, and see if he can change? Maybe you can find him a job, get him something outside of baseball that he can do. And Taylor loved my brother because our family is very tight that way. And so when we asked Taylor about it, he says, yeah, I'll move to Denver. And so we packed him up and moved him here. And he did great for about 3 or 4 months. Was working for a company, and my brother was watching him carefully. He was, seemed to be doing okay, going to church with him and everything. And my brother had 3 small kids that were Taylor's cousins. I mean, and they all idolized him. They all thought Taylor was just the best thing since sliced bread. And
Yeah.
so they wanted to everything to do with Taylor. And then one night Taylor sneaks out and doesn't come home for 3 or 4 days. And my brother calls me up and he says, I think he's doing it again. And they said, well, maybe he's on his way back to Vegas. I don't know. We'll wait and see. Well, he finally showed up again, and he'd been drinking, and he admitted that he had, and he'd lost his job, and he didn't have any money left. I mean, he was just flat broke and lost his job. Well, my brother gave him several chances, and helped him out as much as he could. And after a while, Taylor found a girlfriend and decided he found her at a bar. So he decided, well, I'm going to move in with you. And so he moved in with her, and of course, he gave her the big pitch on the next big league baseball player, and she fell in love with him. And they moved in together. And after not too long, we get a call from her. Your son's a drunk. I don't know what to do with him. Going, who are you?
Who are you? Yeah. You have no clue who this is, right?
I have no clue who she is. So we took a trip and came to Vegas or to Denver to see him, see my brother, see him, and find out what's going on. We met her. We saw where they were living. And she kind of told us, well, he had a job when I met him, but he hasn't worked since he's moved in here. And I go to work every day. I come home. I'm not sure what I'm going to find when I get home. And I just looked at her and I says, you guys are adults. You're going to have to work this out. There's nothing more I can do. I mean, at this point, I want to grab him and take him home and love him back into sobriety, but you can't do that. I learned the hard way that enabling your addictive son or daughter only makes them worse. And I think that's probably what we did the first 2 or 3 years, is we enabled and allowed it to happen, and made Taylor a worse alcoholic than he needed to be. So we just told her, you're going to have to work this out. If you want to kick him out, you're going to have to kick him out. But that's not my call. That's yours. And well, they lived together for a couple more years, and he would work on again, off again, but he would seem like he had a job long enough to get a paycheck, and then he'd get a paycheck, and he would spend it on alcohol. His resume got pretty funny after a while. I'd help him with his resume. He probably had 200 jobs on there. After a while, I said, there's really not worth putting all this on here anymore.
Yeah. So, did he ever at any point go through like Alcoholics Anonymous? I think that'd be a question to ask. Did anything like that happen?
Yeah, we tried that in Vegas. I went to some Alcoholics Anonymous classes with him. I helped him out with the LDS Church ARP Addiction Recovery Program. Got him involved in that. And I'd always hear, he'd always go to 1 or 2 or more sessions and say, I don't need this. I can quit on my own. And, I heard that so many times, I just finally says, fine, I quit trying. Mm-hmm. But we spent, thousands of dollars getting him into rehab programs, places where you're supposed to be learning life skills and things like that. And he admitted to me one time after coming out of jail, he said, I only go to those places. In jail, he says, the only thing I do is I think about when I can get out and get a drink. When I'm in a rehab place, I just think about getting out so I can get a drink. And so, you can only do those so many times, and then you just say, it's not worth my money anymore.
Yeah. That's kind of where I guess my family, this is when we kind of started to learn and know about all this stuff was actually happening, and I was kind of personally on the tail end of my career And I don't know if the year kind of, I'm not sure exactly the year, maybe it was around 2006 or 7.
Mhm.
And I hadn't spoken with Taylor, and it's been quite a while, and I had heard he was kind of struggling with some things. All of a sudden, my brother, all of a sudden myself, and then and some other folks, we like, hey, did we Taylor just called? Like, did Taylor call you? And he was asking for money, right? And he was kind of in dire straits. Like, he was like, hey, it was really hard to handle. I don't say handle, but you could tell he was drunk when he called. Like, you could tell he wasn't even himself. This flamboyant, awesome kid. As a 17, 18-year-old, you're like, dude, this guy is not even the same dude.
Yeah.
And if you ever been put in that position where, your friend, family member, they're going through some struggle, and he's living in a different state. I haven't seen him in well over probably a decade. Um,
Right.
and then he starts calling and asking for money, not only once, but like almost every 4 or 5 days. And I remember calling you, and I'm like, hey, Ryan, what's going on with Taylor? Like, I had to kind of finally tell him to, hey, dude, like, because I was actually personally, I was out of baseball. I had went through my shoulder issues myself and was trying to
Sure.
get actually back into the game. And I was actually personally on unemployment, and I'm like, Taylor, I'm like, I can't help you. Like, I have kids I'm trying to feed. I don't know what to
Right.
tell you, man. So you feel awful about that. But then I had a conversation with you, and you're like, believe me, like, we've done everything we possibly can, sent them to AA. We've gone through the church. We've done all these different things. So your heart is just like, ah, what do we do? Because
Yeah.
then you feel like there's something I can do. But then, like you were saying, like, when we enable it, you want to help, but you're like, well, I can't just throw money at this and this problem's going to go away,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So that was really hard to kind of go through. Um, so I guess we fast forward even a couple more years, if not. Um, so I had ran into Taylor. He had kind of got clean a little bit. It sounded like he was starting to get on track a little bit. And I was scouting last year. I was out in, I guess it's been, I guess a year or so ago now. I was out in Mesa during the
Hmm.
WAC tournament out there, and
Right.
we had been able to get a hold of each other. He actually did it through his wife. That his wife, who had no idea who she was.
Right.
She had kind of messaged me on Facebook and said, "Hey, I'm Taylor Smith's wife." And all of a sudden, I start seeing pictures of Taylor. I guess this kind of proof, like, this is my husband. And I'm like, wow, this is kind of strange, right? Um, and then I eventually fast forward. I eventually get his number. We talk, and I'm like, hey, I scout. I'm gonna be in Phoenix, um, in Mesa, watching this tournament. And he's like, oh, I live right around the street. This is where the A's complex is in Mesa. He's like, I'll come to the game and meet you at the game. So he comes to the game, right? And I see him, and it's been a long time. I could see in his face, like, he wasn't the young Taylor Smith I knew. Uh,
Right.
you could tell he's been through a lot, but
Through the
you could
war.
also see, yeah. So he shared his whole story, um, and he started to talk about his health in regards to, he started to get some seizures, right? Things started to happen. Kind of tell us what happens and what was going on there with his seizures.
Well, about 2010, we decided, I had retired, so we decided, well, we're going to move where grandkids are, and Corbin and his family had moved to Colorado. So, of course, Robin says, well, guess where we're moving? Colorado. So we sell a house in Vegas, and we're on our way here to Colorado. And we the thing we tried to do, my brother's a bishop in the ward, and so he's been helping Taylor as much as he can, and he's put him up in well, it's a motel, it's a daily hotel motel type thing. He put him up there because he just didn't have anywhere else to go. He'd left his girlfriend, and he was just basically living on the street. Well, my brother, with a big heart, he didn't want that to happen, so he pays to have him, living at this hotel. Well, we moved to town, and first thing I do is I go over there. I want to see what's going on with Taylor, and let's find out what's happening here. And so we go visit him at the hotel, and he's down on his luck. He's not had a job in who knows how long. He's got he doesn't have a refrigerator in this room, but he's got a cooler full of beer. So I said, pack up your stuff. You're gonna go home with us. And of course, Robin, she's going, wait, what? Where he's what? And he says, this is your last chance, Taylor. He says, we're going to give you one last shot. We're going to help you out, get you cleaned up, get you a job, and get you living a normal life. Well, he appreciated that, and he came home with us. Well, the first night he's home, he has a seizure so bad we don't know what to do. And
right in front of you.
Right in front of us, yeah. And we're we call 911. They bring an ambulance and take him to the hospital. So we find out that these seizures are a process of detoxing. Every time he's not drinking, he's detoxing, and he has seizures. So there's a doctor in our ward who gave him medication, anti-seizure medication, which had worked for him for quite a bit. And then, but every so often, if he goes off the wagon and starts drinking again, then when he stops, he starts seizing. Well, after a while, it didn't even matter whether he was drinking or not drinking. His seizures got so bad that it just became a big part of his life. And how that relates to drinking, I don't even know. And basically, the doctors told me they don't know either. It's just something that happens. But it happened enough that it scared us, and so we got medication for him and got him as stabilized as we could. At that point, we decided we need to get you into a facility that can handle this, as well as take care of your drinking and get you sobered up. And so there's this place called Harvest Farms in Wellington, Colorado, which is up by Fort Collins. And I found out about the program and asked him, what do we have to do to get in there? And the guy talked to me, and he talked to Taylor and said, would you be willing to do this? And he gave him a whole bunch of ultimatums, either you are or you aren't. And Taylor says, yeah, I'm ready to do it. I'll do it. So, it cost a fair amount of money, but it seemed like it was the right thing to do because it was a 1-year program. Okay. And we figured, 1 year's a good time. He hasn't been sober in a year since he was in high school, probably. So we drove him up there and dropped him off, and he first night there he's seizing, and they call us and they go, we know you told us about these, but just how severe are they? And we told them, well, we don't know, but we said he's got medication, which we gave them because they have to give him the medication. So I guess for the first couple of weeks they were a little bit concerned because he kept seizing, but they kept giving him medication. After a while, they went away a little bit because he was more detoxed. He was more chemically stable. So he was doing well, and he lasted in that program about 9 months, and then just walked away from it. He just decided I don't need this anymore. And I get a call from him. He's in Fort Collins, and he says, "Hey, I'm up here in Fort Collins. I'm done with the program." So I left, and I'm going, "What do you mean you're done with the program?" I said, "That's a year program, and as far as I'm concerned, you're 3 weeks short or 3 months short." And he goes, "Oh, I didn't need it anymore, so I left." I went, "Well, I don't know what you're going to do, but I'm not coming to get you." And he goes, "Oh, you don't need to. I've got a ride home." And so some gal had given him a ride, and on the ride home, she is driving too fast and flips her car, and it's a convertible, and so Taylor, with his 6'4" frame, his head sticking up above the window, and she turns the car over, and he hits his head and breaks his neck. So he's got one of these big halo things on, screwed to his head to keep his neck straight. And so we find out that he's in the hospital, and we go and, when he's done, we check him out and bring him home, because what are you going to do? He's got a broken neck. Where else is he going to go? So he came home and lived with us and was continuously having the seizures while at home. So seizures have probably been ongoing for about 2 to 3 years at this point. And, we're just don't know what to do, but we're not calling 911 every time anymore. We're just helping to stabilize him. They seem to be getting worse, but they get worse even later on in life. So that became a part of his living makeup at that point.
Yeah, so that's what I was shocked by when we're at this baseball stadium watching this game, and this is like just a few weeks before the draft, and I've kind of done scouting, if you will, at that particular game, and I'm just listening to him tell me his story, and I'm just like, man, I had no idea any of this stuff was going on. Like you broke your neck, like this is insane. Right, and then he mentioned too, I think there was either another 1 or 2 other episodes where he almost lost his life. And do you remember any of those episodes, or can you share that with us?
Yeah, he's had several episodes where he's because he's lived on the street.
Yeah.
I mean, his goodwill with everybody has been used up, and so he's been living on the streets, and he'll be at a park and have an episode and be face down in the gutter, and somebody will come along and find him, and they'll call the police, or they call the police, and then the paramedics will come and get him. Well, he's flatlined a couple of times in the ambulance. They've had to put the paddles on him to get his heart to start again. He's told us stories. He had told us stories about seeing his grandpa in heaven, and seeing if his grandpa says, it's not your time, Taylor. You need to go back and take care of a few things before you can come here and be with us here in heaven. And those are the stories that Taylor was telling us. So we're thinking, well, how many lives does this cat have?
Yeah.
Because he just seems like he keeps dodging the bullet, and we're just not sure. I honestly thought we would get a call one day and they'd say, we found your son dead in the park, in the gutter somewhere, and come and identify him. But it never happened. Fortunately, that never happened.
Yeah, I remember us having that conversation where you were at the point as a father where you're like, I fully expect this call to happen. Right, the worst nightmare call that your kid has just passed away. Right, that something has happened. He's flatlined numerous times. He told me one of the stories of in Denver. We all know how cold it gets there. He was just sitting on a bench in a park, and it was snowing. I think he said he had a t-shirt and shorts on, and probably flip-flops, and was almost. Who knows how, he goes, I don't really know how long I was sitting on this bench, but I was like almost frozen. And somebody walked by that was just casually walking by and noticed that I was sitting on this bench and was kind of like, oh my gosh, like, are you okay? And he was like just barely, up, probably shivering, probably had numerous health issues at that particular time. And had to call the ambulance there, and maybe that was one of the times where he flatlined as well. So man, it's heavy stuff, that all this is happening with Taylor. And so I'm like, cool, like he's getting his life back on track. It's been years since I've seen him. He looks good, and we've had a couple conversations. It sounds like he got a job in Mesa through the church. Things are kind of starting to help. They're helping him out a little bit. And then we fast forward to the day, tell us what happened on that day when we lost him.
Well, how Taylor got to Arizona is there's this ranch in Arizona called the Welcome Home Ranch. And I had heard about it from my previous business partner that lives in Arizona. He called and told me about it because he was trying to get his son in that had an heroin addiction. And so he called me to tell me about it. And He said, yeah, it sounds great. I just don't think I can get Taylor to do it because it's a 2-year commitment. And so about the same time, we get a call out of the blue from some lady in, I think it was Lakewood, Colorado, not too far from where we live. She says, I just talked to your son. He's in this park over here. He's kind of turning yellow. I think his liver is about shot. She said, I can tell he's not in a good place, but I don't think there's much life left in him. And so we got the address for the park, and so we went over to see him. Well, at the same time, I'm thinking, how do we get him down to Arizona to this ranch? And so we went and we found Taylor, and he was close to dead at that point. And we took him home and cleaned him up, got him to the doctor, and got him taken care of. And then I call this ranch and I said, here's our situation. What do we need to do? And they said, well, we just need to talk to your son. They said that usually we have an age range of where we'll take him. And he's over the age limit, but he sounds like somebody we would take a chance on. And so we talked to Taylor. We said, Taylor, here's what we think. This is what you need to do. And we didn't tell him it was a 2-year commitment because he did flat out said no way. So he says, yeah, I'll do it. He says, when are we going to go? And so we had to get some medical stuff done and dental stuff done, to make sure everything was good by the time we got there. And so we did that. And so about a week later, we're on our way there. And we drove him down there because I just wanted to spend the time talking to him. I mean, at 15 hours, I could talk to him, and just because I never knew. I thought maybe this is my last shot,
Mm-hmm.
So we get there and we walk into the place and he's very impressed with it. He likes it. He says, I think I can do this. And then the guy says, well, it's a 2-year program. Taylor goes, what? Says, I can't do that. And I said, Taylor, I've already paid. You have to. I mean, it was $10,000. I'd already prepaid it. So,
yeah,
there's no way you're getting out of this. And I said, me and Mom are leaving and you're staying behind. So he stayed there. He learned a lot of good things. And a lot, what we didn't know going in was that about 70% of the guys that were in this place belonged to the same faith that Taylor did. And so every Sunday he could go to church with these guys, and the people at the church, they just really learned to love him. I mean, they thought Taylor was great. I mean, his personality, the things he did, and the kindness in his voice, and the things that he did for the Lord, they just absolutely loved him. And so he endeared himself to them, and he'd been sober for so long that his old personality was coming out again.
Yeah.
And he was losing all of the temptation that he'd had. And so we felt like, we're really off to a good start here. And then one of the things they did there is they boarded horses, and so people would come in with their horses and they'd train them and do things. And so he met people doing that, and his wife was there. She would come and help out with the horses and stuff. So other people were coming in, and he just saw her, and they locked eyes, and it became a mutual thing. So that when he got out, she was there to pick him up. But we didn't know he was getting out because we thought, hey, it'll be a few more weeks, and then we'll go down and bring him home. He called us up one day and he says, I'm out and I've got a girlfriend and we're getting married. And I'm going, you what?
Of course you are, right?
Of course you are. Well, yeah. Why would it be any different? So yeah, they got married on, I think it was July something. I can't remember what, but in the heat of the Arizona desert, they get married. And we're not there. It was just a fast, let's get hitched type thing. And so they get married. He moves in with her, and she has a job and he doesn't. So he's drastically trying to find a job. But he was close to the A's or their training facility, and so he would walk over there and watch him play, and just really, really fell in love with baseball again. And he talked to some of the guys, and I thought this would be perfect for him. He could go in and be a pitching coach, do something, get back into baseball that way. And I talked to him about that, and he said, "Yeah, I just don't know if I can get back into baseball. I'm afraid it'll bring me back to drinking." And it was the first time in my life that I thought he really has conquered this thing, and he's really thinking straight now. And then at church, one of the guys that he works with, or that he went to church with, he said, I got this job. I don't know if it's good for you. I don't know if you're capable of doing that. He said, but come in tomorrow. I'll interview you. We'll see what it looks like. And the guy talked to Taylor's funeral. He said, Taylor walked into my office, and it wasn't as though I was interviewing him for a job. It was that he was interviewing me as to whether I was good enough to hire him. And so he said, Taylor didn't have any knowledge of what we needed him to do, but he said, I couldn't say no to him. And he said, but he did learn everything he needed to learn, and he was in a really good place at that point in time. His life had really changed for the better. The one thing that Taylor never did tell us, though, was that he constantly must have had pain because his liver was failing. And the doctor told us afterwards that the liver, when they did the autopsy, they looked at the liver and they said, how was he even alive for even a minute? They said he must have been in constant pain to even be walking around, and we're going, we didn't know any of this. And his wife says, I didn't know any of this.
Yeah. And
so that was the curse of 20 years of alcoholism. It not only hurts you physically, but your organs start to take a real punishment, and his definitely did. So that was what the autopsy showed, was that his kidney, or his did I say kidneys? I mean liver. His liver was so bad that it was causing his kidneys to shut down, and everything caused his heart to function irregularly. So he was having heart problems, kidney problems, and liver failure. All the while, he's been working for this company and learning things and pacifying his life and doing, just getting on with his life better than he had done for the first or for the last 20 years. So we thought, this is great. This is awesome. We just honestly thought, well, this is terrific for now, but we've seen the other shoe fall before. When's it going to happen again? And, it didn't happen again. He passed away on July 23rd last year. And he had an appointment at 7:00 that night with the stake president. And so he was in having a nap before he had to go see the stake president. And his wife went in to wake him up, and he'd fallen asleep and passed away in his sleep. So couldn't have been any more peaceful than that. But at the same time, don't know how painful it was either.
Yeah, I mean, as you could say, I guess non-drinkers, we don't know what that's like, what it feels like, how quickly you can get addicted to this stuff. But yeah, I mean, that's what I noticed when I saw him, in regards to you kind of painted your own picture in your mind, right? And the images of, as he's telling me these stories of almost losing his life and the car accident and almost freezing to death. And you kind of paint this own picture. You're like, oh my gosh, this is like it's a movie, right? It's crazy. But no, I mean, what can you, in regards to advice, we have high school kids, college kids, parents, young parents, what advice can you give to everybody about this whole story with your son?
Never drink, never do drugs, Never do anything that's going to cause you to be an addict, whether it's prescribed drugs or illicit drugs or even alcohol. I mean, everything is just, it will tempt you at the beginning and you'll think you can handle it. Everything you think you can handle are the things that you can't handle. And once it gets a hold of you, it controls your entire life. It controls everything about you, and it ruins your life and the life of everybody who cares about you. And so, especially for an athlete, I mean, I know the temptation is there after a ball game to go have a cold one with the guys, but if you have any propensity for being addicted to anything, don't do it. It will create havoc on you. And I've known that for, I mean, I never drank in my life because I saw what it did to my dad and I didn't want to do that. So I avoided all the temptations. And I taught my boys about it. And unfortunately, Taylor just didn't listen, or he was more prone to following the crowd rather than being a leader of the crowd. But be the leader. You know, if other guys are doing those things, be the leader and don't do it. That's about the best piece of advice I can give you.
That's awesome. No, that's great advice. Just don't even do it. And we were both raised in a church that really preaches that. That's part of our faith and a part of what we call the word of wisdom. No drugs, no alcohol. I mean, I don't know what good it brings to anybody. It seems to bring much more pain than good. So it's a hard subject to talk about.
It is.
I appreciate you coming on board. It's super emotional.
But you know what? I like talking about Taylor. The good years were great, and his last year was awesome. It was the 20 years in between that taught us all kinds of negative lessons that we had to learn from. But it's what we do. It's how we deal with it.
Yeah. Whew. This has been rough. And I knew it'd be that way. But yeah, I wanna thank you for sharing this.
Well, thank you for giving me the chance. I do appreciate it. I hope it helps somebody down the line. If anybody's listening carefully, listen to the message. Your life and your mind is more important than that first drink you take, because it could be the worst drink you take.
Yeah. Well, Ryan, I appreciate you coming on board. I'm going to get this message out. That's the best we can do, right, in this circumstance. I am grateful that he was able to start figuring things out, and that light, was back in his eyes. And I know he's in a good place. You mentioned he saw Grandpa, probably a couple of times. He's probably hanging out with him right now. So
we're playing together, I have no doubt.
Yeah. Hey, I appreciate you coming on board. Please tell your wife, Robin, hello. We love you guys. We love your family, and we'll be in touch.
Thanks, Chad. Love you guys too. Take care.
All right. We'll talk to you later. Have a good one.
All right. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.